On the fateful day of October 19th, 1979, Typhoon Tip slammed the country of Japan with 150 plus mile an hour winds. At Marine Camp Fuji, more than 1,200 Marines were bunkered down in their Quonset huts to ride out the storm. The doors were nailed shut to prevent them from flying away. As the wind blew, a 5,000-gallon fuel bladder broke open, and the gas poured across several huts, which was then ignited by a heater. Combined forces from several branches of the military raced to help the injured and bring them to safety amidst one of the largest typhoons in Japanese history. Here is a part of the story from someone who lived it.
I was the NCO in charge that day at Yokota Air Base Hospital. I was in charge of the emergency room, and when my boss called and notified me of this tragedy, we initiated a recall of all hospital personnel and started putting together a rescue team to go up the mountain. Not as easy as it would seem. We were only 60 miles away, but because of the narrow roads of Japan in the 70s, our ambulance bus and our field ambulances had lots of difficulty going off base and going onto Japanese roads. So we did travel up to Mount Fuji in a caravan with a 44-passenger bus set up for litter patients and 3 field ambulances with a Japanese police escort taking us through the narrow streets and the small communities. We arrived on the mountain, at the base of the mountain, and set up a launch site from there, because beyond that point, the ambulance bus and certain vehicles couldn't go up higher. We found multiple Marines in different states of injury and despair. Maybe as many as 100 had ultimately been burned. Some had already received some treatment from Japanese professionals at a tiny local hospital nearby, but most were still laying in their Quonset huts or in the field around the base encampment, and most still had not had any treatment at all. In the triage principles we developed, all patients, every person had to have 2 IVs, large bore, to get plenty of fluids in, and we had to get an airway established if they were not breathing adequately or if we thought they might lose their airway. This took multiple hours, well into the night, and it wasn't just our personnel. We had Army helicopters brought in, Navy doctors and nurses and corpsmen. We had Army helicopters that began choppering out the patients as they were triaged and stabilized to the point where they could be transported safely. Some had to be resuscitated along the way, but we ultimately did, through the night, chopper out all of the patients except those that were minor injury, and those went out by vehicle. In the ensuing 2 days at our hospital, we worked around the clock with patients in every bed, in the hallways, everywhere we could put patients, working to keep infection at bay, working to keep them fluid resuscitated, and working to keep them alive. Within 72 hours, maybe 96 hours of the actual event, the Air Force sent over 2 C-5 transport airplanes with the renowned burn team from Burke Army Medical Center, who came and evaluated every patient, and they ultimately took all but one back to San Antonio, to Burke Army Medical Center. This was a traumatic event for a lot of people, because most of us had, in our small community in the Air Force, hadn't been exposed to severe injuries of that nature, but lots and lots of people showed themselves as stars that night and the next days. They worked tirelessly for hours and 24 hours and 36 hours, and ultimately did the Air Force and the Navy proud these were Marines. They belonged to the Navy. And the Navy was very appreciative of what we had done to help their people. And this is just a community of military and how we work together.